Small group.
All right. Hey, everybody. This is week 4 of Master Your Metabolism. We have been wearing our CGMs now for 3 weeks, having some pretty interesting observations coming up for some of the participants and for myself. And yesterday was Easter Sunday, and we had a big fat meal at my house, like we always do. And with dessert, and I gave in and ate it. I should not have, but it was very interesting. And so John was saying he got on his treadmill and walked for 30 minutes and only got about a 2-point drop in his blood sugar over that 30 minutes, went about 1.5 miles. And I have some thoughts about that I will share if people are interested. Any other observations from the week that were things that you either found interesting that you had observed before, or things that you were surprised by, or anything like that? Anything at all?
I also have been experimenting with the protein first,
Mm-hmm.
followed by the carbs, and that
Mm-hmm.
does seem to work. I was very surprised at how well that worked.
No, I think it works admirably. It really changes the absorption and changes the steeper rise that you can get when you eat something that's got carbs in it. Yeah, I've been still fairly surprised how little of an amount of something with carbs or sugar in it that it takes to raise my sugars quite a bit.
Yes,
So
yes,
um
same here.
that was one thing that's really been like, okay, um wow, anytime I eat, even like a half a piece of somebody else's pound cake or something, and it's just like,
Somebody else's. Ha, ha, ha.
well, hey. Not nice.
Sorry.
Anyway, so we can talk more at the end. I'm going to go ahead and give this presentation and then open it for discussion, because I think a lot of people here are going to have opinions about the stuff that I found out. So let's see. Here's the screen I want.
Glasses.
Yeah, fine. All right, can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, super. All right, so this is week 4, and our topic for today is going to be exercise for metabolic health. And this is not stuff that I knew ahead of time. This is stuff I really had to work hard to come up with some of this information. But when I really start talking about exercise in my practice, a lot of people roll their eyes and they go, oh, that's not for me. Or maybe they already have their preferred type of exercise and they only want to run 10Ks, or they only want to excel at some other sport. And, my personal goal with exercise is different. It's really to live healthier longer. It's not something that I inherently have found myself enjoying. And I do recommend that, before you start gung-ho into some exercise thing that you saw on the internet, to really think about what are your long-term goals with exercise, and to keep those in mind when you are designing what you're going to do as exercise, because exercise really is a lifelong prescription that really ought to be mandatory for everybody. And there's no pill for that, just like there's no pill for sleep and there's no pill for healthy eating. So there are, in my view, 4 goals for an exercise program that is going to maximize your health and your longevity and your health span, not just your lifespan. And those are aerobic efficiency, which is fat burning, and then anaerobic performance, and that's kind of stamina, stability, and then strength. And you notice that I did not say burning calories. So this is a misconception that many people have when they embark on an exercise program, that maximizing calorie burn is a good thing. And actually, it really isn't. And for several reasons that we're going to discuss. So, our first goal is to improve aerobic conditioning, which is also fat burning ability. And a lot of people who start into a weight loss program are told not to exercise at all. And my suspicion about this is because most people who are exercising to burn calories are really exercising too hard. And I'm not saying too long, I'm just saying too hard. And the problem that happens when you do that is that you end up burning only sugar and not fat. And if you optimize for aerobic efficiency, then you're de facto optimizing for fat loss. And so that's kind of the goal. So when we look at exercise, the intensity of the various exercises can be divided into zones. And zone 6 is the most intense, short burst, like sprints. And zone 2 is really the correct level of exercise that's best for improving aerobic conditioning. And the dose of zone 2 that's necessary for an individual to improve varies greatly. And even in elite athletes, it's probably ought to be 60 to 75% of their training routine. And the intensity is going to vary a lot as well. And the higher zones are better for building muscle strength and power and speed. And this lower zone, zone 2, is better for aerobic conditioning. Another word for that being cardiorespiratory fitness. Zone 1 is really the lowest level of muscle movement. It means you're moving, but you're not under any stress at all. You're walking or strolling. You're on a coffee cruise, on a bike. You're going along and you can comfortably converse with another person. And when we got to start talking about zone 2, what we're talking about is the mitochondria of your cells. And I will explain more about what I mean by that in just a second.
Dana,
Yes.
okay, good. It just changed. We were seeing all your notes and everything.
Okay,
Now
let me start over with that because yeah, something weird happened and
now we're back to the
hang
now we're
on.
back to the well, now
I'm going
we're
to
back
stop
to the-
sharing and fix it, and then I'll come back and continue.
Okay. Thanks.
Dana, while you're fixing that, I wanted to see if John was sharing his the cauliflower recipe from your sister-in-law,
You know,
who's a
he
chef.
gave it to me and I thought I put it in the portal.
Okay.
I will look again and double check.
I fixed it yesterday to go with our ham, and it was just outstanding. I didn't miss. My wife had potato salad. I had my pureed cauliflower, and I loved it.
Thank you.
Okay, ready to share again. I think I've got it fixed. Don't know why that happened. That was kind of weird.
Jocelyn? Okay, never mind.
Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. All right, so how do we measure aerobic fitness? So this setup here is the fancy way to figure out what your personal zone 2 is. And zone 2 is a certain percentage of your VO2 max. And what VO2 max is a, well, let me just explain how they measure it and then you'll know what it is. So you can do it on a treadmill, you can do it on a bike, and it's measured in an exercise lab while you're hooked up to a device that completely blocks your mouth and your nose. So you're only breathing through their device, and it has sensors on it. And one sensor measures the oxygen that's going in and coming out. And then the other one is measuring the concentration of the carbon dioxide that's going in and coming out. And because we know what it is going in, and now we know what it is coming out, then we know how much oxygen you're using. And the computer calculation divided by the amount of work that you're doing on the bike gives you a maximum oxygen consumption per watt of power that you generate on the bike. And if you make somebody work harder and harder and harder, at some point they hit that maximum, and they may be able to work harder, but they're not utilizing any more oxygen. And that's, you get that graph, and that's your VO2 max. And the higher, the more fit whoever this is, the higher that number is going to be in milliliters, excuse me, per kilo per minute. And then zone 2 is going to be a percentage of that, not a fixed percentage. It's going to be different for each person. So zone 2 is a maximum intensity of aerobic exercise that is sustainable, like more or less indefinitely, while keeping your blood lactate level below 2 millimoles per liter. So what the heck is that? Let me explain. And while what I'm going to explain is the why you ought to do this, finding your zone 2 is actually pretty easy, because what it is you simply find the highest sustainable speed or power or heart rate at which you can still speak somewhat comfortably in complete sentences with another person. And if you want to confirm this with your CGM, it's if your blood sugar is slowly falling during the workout, then that's actually about right. So the best exercises for zone 2 are cycling on a stationary bike, walking on a treadmill, or a stair climber. And the best time for zone 2, apparently, if you want to maximize fat burn, is before you eat in the morning. So let me kind of get into the nitty gritty of what this is. So the currency of energy inside your cells is a molecule called ATP, and this is what powers your muscle fibers to contract and release. It's kind of like a rechargeable battery where glucose or fat are broken down to their chemical substrates in order to transfer their energy to the ATP. And when you're using oxygen to burn those chemicals, fat or glucose, then we call that aerobic metabolism, and it's happening inside your mitochondria. So here we go with some science. So think about the right side of this diagram as inside of a mitochondria, and the left side as outside of a mitochondria, but still inside the cell. So the right side is aerobic metabolism, and aerobic metabolism can burn fatty acids, or it can burn this thing called pyruvate, which comes from glucose. And those can both be burned in mitochondria after they're broken down into their little subcomponents. And if you burn glucose, you can actually use a different pathway called the anaerobic pathway, which does not happen inside the mitochondria and does not happen with oxygen. Now, the pathway that uses oxygen, which is the inside the mitochondria, is very, very efficient. So one molecule of pyruvate makes 34 molecules of ATP. Whereas if you burn glucose in the anaerobic way, it only makes about 4 ATP. So you can see it's a lot less efficient, but on this side, you have to have enough oxygen to make it work. And it's slow. So when we're burning our calories or our energy, we're burning the fat, and we're also burning a little glucose, and we're making a little lactate kind of all the time. So your resting level of lactate is about 1 millimolar. And if you remember, I said your zone 2 is 2 millimolar. So it only has to go up by about 50% before it's sort of maxed out. And as the work intensity of your muscles increases, your metabolism is going to need to shift more to the left side of the diagram, which is called glycolysis. And I'll probably refer to this several times as glycolysis. But glycolysis produces faster energy, but less efficient energy. But it also produces lactic acid, and lactic acid is lactate plus hydrogen. Now, the lactate can come across the membrane into the mitochondria, and it can also be burned using oxygen. But the more lactate there is, the less fat can be burned. So the higher the lactate level goes, so the harder you work, the higher the lactate goes, and the less fat you can burn. And so the lactate eventually takes over the entire aerobic mechanism and stops you from burning fat. So what you want to do with your zone 2 is you want to exercise just below that threshold where the lactate gets so high that it starts blocking out the fatty acids from going in. And so that's what zone 2 is. Now, when our cells can't access energy fast enough, our metabolism will switch even more to this side of the graph. So more glycolysis, which is much less efficient, but it's also a lot faster. And that's called anaerobic catabolism, which means it's breaking down molecules in your body to produce energy. And these are more intense periods of activity, and we can't oxidize enough fat or glycogen or glucose on this side to give you enough energy to keep going. And so that's why the other pathway gets revved up. And the higher it gets revved up, the higher this lactate goes. And eventually lactate will start spilling out of the cells. There's not enough capacity over here to keep burning it up. So it'll spill out of the cells, go into your bloodstream, and the acid, the protons, along with it will eventually cause you to start burning and hurting and eventually have to stop exercising or slow down. So anyway, so our second pathway does not use fat for energy. And the higher it goes, the more it blocks you from burning fat. And if that's not confusing enough, I don't know what is. Anyway, so zone 3 is your higher intensity exercise. And once you exceed the capacity of muscle cells to take up more oxygen, then the lactate level starts to rise. And you can actually buy, I found out, I'm not going to do it, but you can actually buy lactate meters and lactate test strips. And measure that in your blood and see where the exact threshold is. So if you want to get super efficient with it, you can do that. The lactate that ends up in your blood has to be processed by your liver. And this workout, when you're spilling lactate into your blood, is perceived by your body as more stressful. So what does it do? It releases norepinephrine and it releases cortisol, which starts causing your blood sugar to rise. And so that's why I said, if you're looking at your glucose meter and your sugar is rising as you're exercising, then you have definitely exceeded that threshold and you are now only burning glucose and not any longer burning fat. So one of the especially good things about zone 2 is that the more you do it, the more time you spend exercising at that zone 2, the better your mitochondria get at doing that. And you actually grow new mitochondria, and the new ones that you have grow larger, and they become more efficient at using oxygen and burning the lactate, so that you can then burn even more fat, which is great. So anyway, in insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes, the liver may release glucose from glycogen even before the norepinephrine hits your bloodstream. And in a high glucose state, insulin is supposed to block that and tell the liver not to make any more, but sometimes it happens. All right, so just one more time. So lactate production, which only comes from glucose, goes in and fills up this excess oxygen burning capacity here. And the more and more of it there is, the less and less you can burn the fat. So the fitter a person is, the healthier their mitochondria are, the more work they can do with less lactate buildup, which is kind of cool. Now, in your low carb diet, if you're only taking in 20 to 50 grams of carbs a day, once your glucose levels start to fall, then you can go back to burning fat even more, and fatty acids will be broken down in your liver, and you will make chemicals that are called ketone bodies. And this is something that you can actually start to smell on your breath, because they're one of the ketone bodies is actually acetone. And that's a volatile chemical. You can sweat it out, breathe it out, pee it out. And the glycerol that's part of the fatty acid is part of fats will go to glycogen, which will go to glucose, and your brain can use those, but your brain can also use those ketone bodies, which is interesting. But if you're taking protein in excess of your body need, that will actually get converted to glycogen and more glucose. All right, so there are a lot of people who have insulin resistance or diabetes who are so unhealthy with their aerobic conditioning that they're basically up and out of zone 2 or over 2 millimoles of lactate with almost any activity, let alone 45 minutes of hiking up an incline. And this is when we refer to somebody as a sugar burner, basically. And for some people, this is why I think that starting with diet change alone may be an advisable thing, unless they're okay knowing that they're not going to be burning much, if any, fat at first. And maybe when you first start out doing this, you only want to start with 20 to 30 minutes, but the recommended amount of zone 2 work is a minimum of 45 minutes 3 times a week, from what I could find. All right, so why do we care about this? Why do we care about maxing out our cardiorespiratory fitness, aside from the fact that we might have to run to catch an airplane someday, or aside from the fact that we can use it to burn our fat and reduce our insulin resistance? Well, here's one study that I found. And what this shows is the relative cardiorespiratory fitness versus the chance of dying in the next 10 years. And it was a really big study, 122,000 people. So the first 25% are what they called the controls. And they were the least fit of the people who didn't exercise at all. And then they had the below average, and then they had the above average, and then they had the high. And then the last one was the elite. And basically they carved out the top 2.5% and put them in their bracket all their own. And what they found was that even going from low to below average dropped your risk of dying in the next 10 years by half, 50%. So better than quitting smoking. and low all the way to elite level. And these are not professional athletes. This is just the top 2.5%. Dropped your risk of dying by 80%. And that trend persisted even in people up through their 70s when they enrolled in the study, which I thought was pretty amazing. So our goal number 2 from the first slide was get faster, basically get faster in a sprint, and improving your anaerobic performance. And you can do this if you want by interval training. And this is how to increase that number, that VO2 max, where you're just kicking it as hard as you possibly can to get up to the very maximum, the top of your oxygen burning capacity. And the people that I read recommended that this particular kind of training be done once a week. But it's frequently touted as a way to save time in a fitness workout, so that you don't have to do your zone 2. And from what I could find, it's like true and kind of unrelated. So what they recommended was once a week, cycling, running, swimming, rowing, stair climber, that you do time intervals. So 1-to-1 interval of work to rest. And it's basically as fast as you can go for 2 minutes, and then coast for 2 minutes, and then do the same thing over and over again until you've done about 20 minutes of that. And then follow it up with a cool down of zone 2, which is what we already talked about, where you can still talk to somebody while you're going, you're not huffing and puffing. And the reason for the cool down is because when you do these high intensity things, you're going to shoot your cortisol and your blood glucose way up. So it's important to take that back to zone 2 and get that blood glucose to come back down. Now, I don't personally do this yet. I may decide later that I want to do this. I feel like I'm not in good enough shape to do this yet. And my feeling is that the rest intervals actually need to be quite a bit longer, and the work intervals need to be quite a bit smaller when you're first starting out. And I did find one documentary where they were doing 20 seconds and then wait 15 minutes, and then 20 seconds and then wait 15 minutes, and then a third time 20 seconds. So they were doing 1 minute of exercise, and then they were doing that 3 days a week. And I'm like, that doesn't seem like a whole lot. But anyway, if you're looking to lose weight, this is not where you want to start. All right. So for somebody who's starting out with an exercise regimen, and this is actually where I started, and this is goal number 3 and 4, and this is strength and stability. And what it sounds like is best to do would be to alternate this with your cardio, with your zone 2. And so I do this twice a week, and I do something called progressive overload strength training. And if you're interested in what that is, I'm going to try to explain it to you really quick, but there's a really nice YouTube channel, this Gray Steel. And what this is strength training for people over 50. And the guy sounded very, very educated. He knew what he was talking about. Everything he said really jived with what I've heard. But I do this every time I do it with a trainer, and the regimen is called Starting Strength. And basically I go in there and I start with 3 kinds of exercises. The first one is a squat. And for the first couple of weeks when I did squats, I did them with a broomstick on my back like this. I don't know if y'all can see me, but you know, over the back of your shoulders. And it takes you a while actually to get your shoulders flexible enough to do that. But you do 2 warm-up sets of 5, and then you put a little bit of weight on there, and then you do another set of 5, and then you put a little more weight on there, and another set of 5, and then a little more weight, and another set of 5. And it takes you, because you wait twice as long every time you do it. So you do your first 2 sets, you wait none. You do you wait 2 minutes. You do the second set, you wait 4 minutes, you do the third set, you wait 8 minutes, you do the final set. So it's 5 sets of 5. And then you move on to a press, which is an arm movement where you're either picking the bar up over your head or you're laying on the back and you're doing you're doing a bench press. And you do it the same way, where you start with almost no weight, you add a little bit, you do it again, you wait 2 minutes, you do it again, you wait 4 minutes, do it again, wait 8 minutes, do it again. So it's 5 sets of 5. And then the third thing that you do is the deadlift. And the deadlift is just like what I'm doing in this picture here, where you pick weight up off the ground. And when I started, I was picking up, I think maybe 30 pounds. I mean, almost nothing. But when you do it 5 times, you're still pretty tired if you've never done that before. So it's kind of interesting. And you do it the same way with the time intervals, two sets really fast, and then wait 2 minutes, and then keep going, keep going, keep going. And eventually get to where you're heavy enough that you're only doing 1 set of heavy 5, and you're doing basically 2 pounds more than you did last week. And it gets to the point fairly rapidly where it's as heavy as you can possibly lift it. And if you get 3 reps, that's great. If you get 4 reps, that's fine. If you get 5 reps, you get to go up 2 pounds next week. So, and that's how you do it. And you do that until it gets pretty heavy. You do that twice a week. And then they say, okay, well, now you're only going to do it once a week. And the technique is super important. If you do this wrong, you will hurt your back. And so you must have somebody train you the proper way to do a deadlift. And I'm not doing this because I want to win a powerlifting competition. I'm doing it because I want my back strong and I want to be able to pick up my kid or my grandkid. I want to be able to pick my luggage up and put it in the overhead compartment on the airplane. And I want to be able to get up off the ground if I fall. And I don't want to fall. So this helps with stability too. So that's super, super important. All right. So why is strength necessary? Well, unintentional injury is now the 8th leading cause of death among individuals over 65, of which 56% are falls. Sarcopenia, which means loss of muscle mass, is now an independent risk factor for mortality, for dying early. Muscle mass and strength loss is a predictable effect of aging between 3 and 8% a year, depending on how little you do every day. And that actually starts when you're probably in your early 30s. It starts going down. And so the more you can do to flatten that curve, the better off you are. And the cool thing about, if you've never done this before, is that learning a new motor skill has the benefit of cognitive stimulation and prevention of dementia. So kind of cool. And the more muscle mass you have, the more glucose you can handle when you take in, because you have more muscle mass to take up the glucose, which is very, very cool too. All right, so we typically think of strength loss as something that happens like this red line here, where it's gradually going down over time and then flattening the curve, trying to get it to go down slower as you get older. And that's something that can be done literally at any age. But one more set of studies that I found showed that strength loss actually happens more like a stair step in the case of what they called catabolic events. And 2 weeks of being bedbound or injured, or even just not exercising for 2 weeks, can wipe out 6 months of training gains and cause a large drop in muscle strength, muscle mass. So does that mean we shouldn't try? Well, no, of course not. It doesn't mean we shouldn't try. The more muscle reserve you have, the better you're going to tolerate these kind of insults. All right, guys, that's all I've got for presentation for today. So Questions? Who's got questions?
So my exercise this morning, then after eating with only a 2-point drop in blood sugar, was just because I didn't go 45 minutes.
No, it may be that you, as you work up to doing that more often, that you will be able to raise your incline, or you will be able to go a little faster. And get yourself, I mean, you're not doing it and expecting to get not out of breath at all. You're expecting to get a little bit out of breath, but you could still hold a conversation. That was basically how that was explained to me, was you can talk, but it's not super comfortable.
Okay, I'm not stressing enough then. I need to.
Yeah, it may be that
migrate.
it may be just that you need to bump up the energy. But truthfully, if you are not used to doing it, then pick what you've got and do that for a week before you raise it up to the next one. The other thing is, especially if you're going to add strength training, that I talked to my trainer actually about it today, and what he said was he really sees that folks who are over 50 need a longer recovery period before they do it again. And he does not recommend that you train with weights more often than every third day.
Okay.
So I thought that was interesting, but we are working the entire body. It's like, we're not using machines. We're not doing a leg day and an arm day like a lot of the people talk about. We're doing these very, very simple things, and we're getting multiple benefits from them, because when I'm doing an overhead press, I'm standing on my feet. And if I'm losing my balance and I'm going to fall back, the trainer is back there, with his hands like this, ready to catch that bar so that I don't have to fall over. And he's right there. And if I'm doing deadlifts, he's coaching me through every step. He's saying, keep your back straight, keep the bar tight on your shins. Nope, don't lean forward, look up, come on. And making sure that I don't do it wrong every minute of the day, every time I do it, because it's I think it's probably the best exercise I do as far as getting my back strong. And I can really tell a difference. I can really tell a difference in the low back pain that I was having before versus now. I can feel my back and go, wow, I have more meat back there than I used to. And I have always been a very bony upper body kind of person. I never had muscle above my waist before I started doing this ever. Another thing that you could do with your walking or your treadmill would be to put a backpack on and put 10 or 15 pounds or 20 pounds or 30 pounds in that pack, and stress load your spine just a little bit. And that would be another thing that you could do to improve the intensity of what you're doing as far as the zone 2. But if you see that sugar going up while you're doing it, then you're going too hard.
Well, the other thing that I'm concerned about is my weight.
Okay.
Because when the pandemic started, I've been retired for 6 years, and when
Yeah.
the pandemic started, I was still eating as if I was working. So I just cut out lunches and had breakfast and dinner, and dropped my weight from 180 to 155.
Okay.
And now I'm back down to almost 145, which I think is what my weight was in college. So do I need to be continuing to, I guess you're calling it burn the fat?
Well, here's the deal. So, this is not necessarily, okay, so this is zone 2 is something that elite athletes do who have a body fat composition of, I don't know, 6%, 4%. So they eat a lot. They eat a lot of protein and they eat a lot of fat. And they actually, when they go to do, their anaerobic stuff, they eat a ton of carbs. I mean, some of them are eating 2,400 calories just of carbs and burning it all off in a day. And it's just like, whoa, holy cow.
Yeah.
So the point of it for you is to, especially with the doc saying that you have pre-diabetes, the point of it for you is to improve your aerobic efficiency, like we were talking about. And maybe for you, it's not quite as important that you burn fat, but it's very quite important that you keep it in that aerobic range, because that's what strengthens your mitochondria. That's what strengthens your ability to uptake sugar into your cells efficiently. And that's what keeps your blood sugars from rising at night. And that's what keeps that average blood sugar down.
Okay.
So those things are really important. And adding muscle will also do the same thing. And that's, I don't know exactly how old you are. If you retired 5 years ago, you're probably getting close to 70, I would guess.
No, I'm 72.
Okay. So yeah, so the most important part of all of this is for you to keep your stamina and keep, as best as you can, keep your muscle mass up, because my bet would be, if you've gone from 170 to 145, that you've lost a substantial amount of your muscle mass.
Oh, you think it was muscle mass and not fat?
Well, I mean, that's kind of when people lose fat, they always lose some muscle too.
Okay.
And what you want to do is really work on, as best you can, keeping as much muscle as you can. So, to go back into some of the tests that I read about, some of the studies that I read about, they did things like grip strength. And they said, how far can you carry 50 pounds? Like in each hand. How far can you carry that? Can you carry it 10 yards, 20 yards, 100 yards? One of the guys was like, oh yeah, I want to be able to farmer carry, which is basically half my body weight in each hand. And I want to be able to do that for 100 yards. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot. I couldn't do even close to that. Yeah. They wanted you to be able to dead hang from a bar for 1.5 minutes. That's grip strength. Hang your body weight, and basically hold your body weight in your hands. I'm very happy that I can do my deadlift and pick it up 5 times, let alone hold it for 1 minute. I don't think there's any way I could hold it for 1 minute. I pick it up, I put it right back down. But yeah, just anything that you can do that improves your stability and improves your strength, because those falls data, those data about people dying because they fell, were shocking and, very disconcerting. And people who fall and break a hip don't live very long.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what can you do to keep from falling? Well, you can improve your strength and stability.
Yeah.
So those are super important. Okay.
Is there a way we could get your notes?
They'll be, the video will be in the portal. So you can look at them there, but as far as me giving away my presenter notes, no, I don't know that I'm feeling super comfortable doing that.
Okay.
As far as the fact checking and all of that goes, this is like, okay.
Oh,
what came out of my mouth? Was that accurate? Am I going to get sued for it? Oh no.
Oh, okay.
Not
I
too
just I have limited resources as far as when I get out on the street, there are so many potholes and it's so uneven that I want to do a fast walk, but if I stub my toe, I may fall. And I have 2 walking sticks.
which is a problem.
Yeah. So you're doing strengthening training more in a gym than you are in your home.
Right. Yeah, I'm doing that with a coach in a gym. That's exactly right.
And I have had given to me an exercise bike. And
Where is it?
in the living room.
Okay.
And
Well, get on there and crack it.
okay, if that, what I'm wondering about is the kinds of exercise that you want us, or that you think would improve our strength and stability. Can we do that on an exercise bike?
No, the strengthening exercises are exactly what I showed you with the weights in the gym.
Okay.
But you have things in your house that you can use as weights, even though they can be kind of bulky. You probably
Sure.
have a 5 pounds of sugar, 5 pounds of flour.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I have some gallon jugs full of water. Could I use those?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So I'll tell you where I for people who are starting from a position of, okay, I haven't exercised in years. I know what age you are. I don't want to out you to people, but start by getting a low chair, or bench or cushion or whatever, and sit down on it, and then get up off the cushion without using your hands.
Okay.
And then sit down, and then get up, and then sit down, and do it as fast as you can 5 times.
Okay.
Then rest.
Okay.
And then do 5 more as fast as you can.
Okay.
Rest. And then 5 more as fast as you can. When you can do 50 of those, then go to the gym. Or then put a backpack on your back with 10 pounds of weight in it and do the same thing and keep doing it.
Okay.
Now, there's all kinds of ways to skin this cat.
How much does a gallon of water weigh?
7 pounds.
Okay. So that would be a fair, if you fill the jug all the way up, that would be fair. If you started out with it not fair and you weighed it on your scale and it weighed 5 pounds, that'd be 5 pounds.
Exactly.
Or if you had a little barbell that you could hold in your hand, that you could get 5 pounds that way.
You could do that. The problem with holding something in your hand is then if you go to fall, what are you going to do? You have to be able to reach out and hold on to something.
No, I'm going to move my foot forward.
Well, I hope you're going to move your foot forward, but that's how a lot of people fall, is they don't have something to reach out and grab onto. And if you're not completely confident with your stability, then I would definitely put your chair that you're getting up and out of next to the kitchen cabinet so you can reach out and grab something that's not going to move.
That's a good idea. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, so this is coming up with our 4th week of wearing the CGM, and I personally have definitely seen a lot of differences when I get to bed late versus when I get to bed on time, when I eat late versus when I eat at a normal 6:30-ish time. As far as what my blood sugars do overnight, what they do the next morning. I always see my blood sugar rise through the morning. And I think it's a big part of that is because my job now involves me sitting behind a computer screen instead of getting up and moving around. And I am in active thinking mode about what to do about that, to get it not to do that. Even to the point of, okay, I'm going to eat my breakfast and then I'm immediately going to go to doing my zone 2 exercise. And I'm going to start trying to do 20 minutes a day and see how I do.
My
And
Apple Watch tells me to stop and stand up if I've been sitting too long.
well, stand up is fine, but do something
Oh,
more than just standing up.
Move around.
Move around. Just do something that gets you a little bit out of breath.
That's okay.
All
Okay, that's a good tip.
right. Any comments? Jocelyn, you've been very, very quiet today.
That's because I'm listening or watching LSU and Iowa play. It's on the TV in the kitchen. Since
Busted.
Tennessee
Is
is
it still
out.
March Madness?
Women, yeah. It's a women's play.
Oh,
Yes, and it's a
okay.
heavyweight fight, but that's on in the background.
Oh
But
my
no,
gosh.
this information is awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah,
is.
no, the information about the zone 2 and you know why people are advised not to exercise, I was kind of blown away by that. And it seems to me that if you can find, you know, if your goal is to lose weight, that you can kind of fine tune zone 2 plus low carb and really just jet propel it. And it's just like, wow, okay.
But see, this goes against what we were taught, you know, and
Everything I have learned goes against what we were taught. We were taught to eat low fat. Low fat's good for you. Don't eat fat.
artificial sweeteners. Yeah, all
Artificial
this stuff.
sweeteners are fine, you know. Well, I mean, you know, with the 2-phase insulin release, I don't know if I mentioned that to you guys. So insulin releases in 2 phases. So the first one is you put the sweet whatever it is in your mouth and your brain goes, okay, time to release insulin. And the glucose hits your esophagus and your duodenum pretty fast, and your pancreas dumps preformed insulin. And then it starts producing insulin. So you get this stair step up 2-phase release. And for some people, even artificial sweeteners will start that going. Now, it may not continue, but even artificial sweeteners will start it. And there was one paper that I saw that said something about stevia actually being harmful in some weird way. And I did not pay attention to that because that was not my focus of what I was teaching you guys. But now I'm like all interested in it. And I think I need to go back and figure out what the story was there, because there was some metabolic bad thing with one of the sweeteners, and I don't remember which one it was.
I know people who have sugar-free breath mints. A lot of those sugar-free breath mints have sorbitol in there. Well,
yeah, which gets made right into fructose. Thank you very much.
Well, sorbitol is a sugar acid, and it'll rot your teeth right off to the gum line.
Well, you should know.
Well, I saw enough of them.
But yeah, but having something sweet in your mouth all the time is really a recipe for never getting adapted to fat, never getting adapted to low carb. But anyway.
So
all right,
Dana,
guys.
one more question.
Okay.
I would like, do you have a reference that I could go and read, get something from the library to help me understand what my blood sugars should be doing? Because you said 3 or 4 things tonight, just in the last 5 minutes, like you know that your blood sugar rises during the, well, anyway, whatever you said earlier.
Yeah.
I don't understand what my blood sugar is doing and why. Is there a reference you can give me to read more about my blood sugar and what I should be trying to accomplish?
So I do have a reference, but it's not reading. It's actually a podcast that I really like. And it's very deep and it's very sciencey, but you may really like it. It's called The Drive.
DRIVE.
DRIVE. And it's Peter Attia, The Drive. And he is a doctor who is into what's called longevity medicine or anti-aging medicine. And he has all kinds of high-powered guests who are experts in various aspects of metabolic health and cancer and heart disease and what it means when your ApoB is high. And I mean, there's just all kinds of
This is
interesting.
on YouTube.
He has stuff on YouTube, but it's also a podcast. So,
Oh, how do you get a podcast? I'm sorry. You
um,
look him up.
you go on your Apple phone and you look up the podcasts app, and then you type in what you're looking for. And it should.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, he has YouTube videos too on every topic imaginable that has to do with living longer and health and even mental health. Some actually pretty darn good ones for mental health.
It's all connected.
It's funny. His very first podcast ever was talking to Tim Ferriss, and I don't remember what they talked about, but Tim Ferriss is an influencer and kind of a he wrote that book called The 4-Hour Workweek. He's kind of a crazy person, but he's very influential in the blogosphere, the podcastosphere. It's funny, when I first started listening to this podcast, it was because my husband knew this guy from way back 20 years ago or so. And he goes, "Oh, look, this guy's got a podcast." And I started listening. And the first episodes that I came into were the ones that were about sleep. And I mean, there's literally 15 hours in there about sleep. I mean, he interviewed the author of that book that I recommended to you guys, the Why We Sleep book. And they went on for so long that he had to divide it into, I think, 5 episodes. And his episodes are not short. I mean, if you get started listening to him, you're going to be like, oh my God, he does never shut up. Because some of them are 2.5 hours. I mean, they're long.
And you spell his name Atilla?
Attia.
Attia?
Mm-hmm.
Attia. Attia. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. This is wonderful. Thank you very much.
All right. So next week we are going to talk about supplements and hormonal aspects of metabolic health. And that will be our final meeting. So bring your questions, bring your observations, and we'll go from there. And oh my gosh, we talked too long again. It's already been an hour.
I have a question. Are you going to go over cytosine?
I wasn't planning on it because it doesn't exactly have to do with metabolic health, but I can add it in. It's pretty good stuff.
Well, you mentioned pancreas, and
yeah.
So
that's yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll take it under advisement.
Oh, sounds good. Very, very diplomatic.
Okay.
Be sure to post that recipe for Jocelyn.
Okay. Yes, I will do it.
And any others, since your sister, is it your sister or your sister-in-law?
My sister.
Oh my goodness. I love cooking, or at least I used to before I became a physician. But I would like to get back into it and try some different healthier things for myself and for my husband. So I'd really appreciate it.
Okay.
And Dana, I love what you're doing.
Send it to me, and I think I've got it in an email, and I will make sure I put it in the
I texted
portal.
it to you.
Yeah, you did. I have it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Talk to you guys next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.